This is the Mr. Productivity Podcast, and today we're joined by Barby Ingle, a best-selling author, chronic pain educator, and former president of the International Pain Foundation, who has dedicated her life to advocating for patients with rare and chronic diseases through her speaking engagements, media appearances, and award-winning advocacy work. Barby, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I'm so glad to be here.
Now, I'm going to be a dork because this is my show. I'm going to be a dork. There was a song in the 80s called Barbie Girl. Are you familiar with that song?
I am. I love that song.
Okay, so it fits. Okay. Can't play it for copyright reasons, but I just thought I'd ask. Now, we are having a great conversation before I started recording, and I stopped myself. I'm like, wait a minute. We should be recording this. I mean, it's a great call. So I'm excited to have you on the show because you have dealt with a lot of chronic health issues. So I want you, for the audience, to put that into context so they understand what we're talking about, and then we'll start into the actual conversation.
Sure. I live with a chronic rare disease. The newest name for it is algoneurodystrophy, and it's had over 20 name changes because it's rare. And every doctor thinks they discovered something new. So they keep changing the name. Because of that, I saw 43 doctors. 42 got it wrong, and the 43rd got it right. And finally got a diagnosis, which took 3 years. I spent 7 years bedbound and wheelchair bound because 3 years into living with this, they finally diagnosed me, but it took another 4 to get proper treatment, which was multiple treatments. But one that got me walking was an infusion treatment. And I've been through so much overtreated, undertreated, and mistreated with our health system, and realized that it's a minefield that I had to learn how to navigate. And once I did that, I started teaching other people, and learned that healthcare is working as designed very poorly here in the United States, and that there are fixes to get through the system so that you get the care you need.
Yes, I am not a fan of Big Pharma. I read a book about 3 or 4 years ago. It was called Pharma. I don't remember what the title is. I can't think of the guy's name, but he traced. What's that?
Farmed Out?
No, it's called Pharma. All big red letters. I remember that. Okay. And the book was about the history of pharmaceutical industry, big pharma, doctors, medicine, medical schools, from day one until when the book was released. And I was blown away of all the corruption that goes on in our health industry. They're not there to care for us. They're there for money. And what's interesting is I know a lot of doctors who didn't get into the medical field to deal with insurance and collect money. They got in, not all of them, but most of them got in because they want to help people. But the insurance companies, they don't care about helping people. They want the money.
Yes. Absolutely. And same thing with the CDC and the WHO and the FDA and the NIH. They all are wrought with difficulties and challenges. A lot of it is that they bring in their own regulators and try to make law through regulation and rules instead of actually doing what's right for the people. And I'm hoping that now Trump won, and he said he's going to have Robert Kennedy Jr. come in and help with MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. And hopefully we can get Big Pharma on the right track. We can get our regulatory organizations on the right track, and we can actually get individualized care for the people of America who are trying to go through or having to go through chronic health issues or even acute issues. It could be your everyday person. And right now, our system can devastate you and wipe you out with an acute accident, injury, illness. We don't want that to be the case. We want people to get fixed and get back into society so that they can continue on and do what's right by them, their families, as well as humanity.
I was stunned to learn a couple months ago that there is a large number of foods that can only be manufactured and purchased in the United States. And when you think about all the countries in the world, and these foods are only here, and that we have the worst obesity problem, the worst health problems, it makes you wonder. And I, too, am so happy that Robert Kennedy came over with Trump. We need to make America healthy again. I'm 59 years young. I feel like I'm 43 because I take care of myself. I be careful what I eat and what I drink. It's really important. Now, I'm not perfect. I love my Diet Coke. I love going out to dinner once in a while, but I try to eat more often than not. Most people are eating McDonald's type food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks, and that's not good.
Right. And what's in our food, not just our food, but in our environment, like most of the water in the United States, the public service water has fluoride in it. One of the things that Robert Kennedy has said he's going to do is stop the fluoride in that water source. That'll help us as well. America does have more options, and we want freedoms and liberties here in America. But I think that people don't know any better because it is offered. And they think, well, the government wouldn't give us these opportunities and options if they were bad for us, but that's not the way that it goes. And we have so much stuff in our food system, medications, water sources, that it is affecting our health. Half of the children now in America are considered obese, and over 70% wouldn't even be able to join the military when they were 18 because of what they're eating and what's in our food source and what's going through our skin from our environment. So we have to do something to make America healthy again and do the right things for the American people.
Now, if you're listening to this, it's 6 minutes in, you're like, I thought this called the Mr. Productivity Podcast. If you don't understand the connection between health and productivity, well, I can't help you and Barby can't help you because there is a direct connection. If you are not taking care of yourself, so your body has the energy, the fuel to be productive, well, you can't be productive. So this is a very powerful topic to think about because you may think, I'm only 25 years old. I feel fine as you're munching down a McDonald's Big Mac with fries and a Coke. That's going to catch up with you. Trust me, it will catch up with you. And here's the thing. Here's my philosophy on health. If you're eating horribly now, I'm not saying stop everything right now. Make one change. Then you make another change. Then you make another change. It's like the book we all read in school when we were kids, The Little Engine That Could. You start building these small habits, and all of a sudden you have more good habits than bad habits. So just start. I believe in the power of one. Start with one thing that you could change from a bad habit to a good habit and watch that momentum carry you to a healthier life.
Absolutely. And know that, like you said, Mark, I enjoy some treat once in a while. You know, we're not saying cut it out of your life. We're saying do what you do in moderation. If you can change it one item at a time, it can be very beneficial. There's also other ways to help with your testing. There's pharmacogenomics, which can tell you which medications are best for you individually compared to your genetics. There's microbiome testing that can tell you what foods your body can process properly. So not just eating healthy, but eating what's right for you and not saying, oh, well, tomatoes are a good food because that's what it says in the scientific papers. It might be a healthy food, but tomatoes might not be the right food for you, or potatoes or eggplants or nightshades or whatever it is. It might not be right for you. You can do it through one item at a time, the elimination diet, or you can get a microbiome test and find out even quicker. And nowadays we have all kinds of telehealth and telemedicine where you can have a kit sent to your house where it's a cheek swab or poop and scoop and send the poop in type of testing, or blood testing from home where you prick your own finger, put the blood into the repository and send that in to get the information that you need so that you are spending less on healthcare. At the same time, you're getting the individualized information that you need as a patient that will help you live your best life on a daily basis.
I had a guest on my show a couple months ago who introduced me to a company called Siphox, Siphox, not a sponsor of the show. What they do is they send you this kit, you bleed on these test strips, you mail it back, and then they send you your results via a secure portal. I use a functional nutritionist, and I take that blood test, I upload it to a secure portal. I don't have to pay a copay. I don't do anything. She looks at it and she goes, okay, you need to be on these supplements. I am a fan of supplements more than I am medicine, because if you've ever read the book, The Real Anthony Fauci by Robert Kennedy, people my age, by the time we hit age 18, I think we had 18 injections. Now it's like almost 100. And I can't believe that as kids get 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, all these medicines in the body are not going to start causing issues. I'm not a doctor, but I'm trying to use my common sense. I would rather use food as medicine. And I don't mean McDonald's. I don't mean Pizza Hut, neither of which are sponsors of the show. I got to be careful by saying that. I'm not endorsing you eat there, but I'm saying you got to take responsibility. It's your responsibility to be healthy. And if you are a parent, then it's your responsibility to make sure your kids are healthy. It's not their job. It's not their responsibility until they get older. But you can't just blame the government or blame McDonald's. If you're an adult, practice adulting.
Very good. Yes, it's patient empowerment, and the more that you can do for yourself to give you the best life now, but also thinking about your future and where you're going to be. My father passed away from complications of diabetes, and he said had he paid attention 10 years earlier, he wished he had, he would still be alive. Now I don't know now if he would, because he passed away in 2016, but he would have lived longer and healthier and been able to do more in life had he paid attention to what he was doing to himself on a daily basis by stopping at the fast food because it was easy, because he's a single man at home type of situation. You really need to pay attention to what you're eating and live your best life in the future by living your best life each day and paying attention to what you're putting into your body.
So I take my blood glucose 2 to 3 times a day. I take my blood pressure once a day, and I weigh myself every morning. Those are 3 crucial measurements that everybody can take, because your blood glucose tells a lot. Your blood pressure tells a lot. So if you don't have these 3 things, go get yourself a scale, go get yourself a blood glucose monitor, and go get yourself a blood pressure cuff and take these measurements every day.
I have a smartwatch, and it will keep track of my sleeping, how much REM sleep I'm getting, awake sleep, light sleep, deep sleep, and tell me tips and tools for each night based on what happens to get better sleep in the nighttime, sleeping through the night, which will give you better daytime concentration and blood pressure and those types of things. So pay attention to all of those different types of home monitors that you can have. And my watch also keeps track of my number of steps each day. And it also keeps track of my stress levels. When I'm in a really negative situation, I'll run the test on myself and say, am I handling this okay? Do I need to be breathing deeper? What's going on? And really pay attention to keeping my stress levels down, even in a stressful situation. And it's important to keep track of your glucose and your stress levels and your sleep and how much water intake you're getting. I tried a water app, and I was drinking so much water because it told me you have to drink this much in a day. So I was trying to get it all in so I wouldn't forget by the end of the day to get my water in. And the app said, alert, you're drinking your water too fast. So there's a way to drink your water, not just get this much water in your body. That's not healthy for you. You have to do it over time. And that app alert helped me remember, drink my water. I haven't been drinking enough or paying attention, or I drank too fast, slow it down.
I also have an Apple Watch, and I love my Apple Watch for the health features. My goal is 15,000 steps a day. I usually get between 17 and 18,000. Wow. Now, I kind of cheat, air quotes here, because my wife, for our anniversary, our 21st wedding anniversary, she got me a rebounder. I've always wanted a rebounder. So I have my rebounder right behind the sofa in our living room. And I can actually watch television while I'm bouncing up and down, which is really good. It's better on the knees because you're not hitting the pavement. You're actually bounding. So I love my rebounder. I like European football. We call it soccer here in the States. I'll watch a whole game bouncing. It's great. And I identify as Tigger from Winnie the Pooh. So I guess bouncing on a rebounder fits with my personality. But you mentioned water. So I use an app called Water Minder, which tracks my water. I don't put anything other than water on there. So if I drink a Diet Coke, I don't put that in there. I only track my water. But my wife and I, about a month or two ago, we got a Berkey water filtration system. We got it at Amazon. It's not a system. It's actually, it sits on top of our counter. I read about it in Casey Means' book, Good Energy. Okay. And what that does is charcoal water filters. And it filters everything out. We don't have the filters yet that filters fluoride out. My wife and I are looking into getting that. But what's amazing is when my wife is doing, she's like one of these like sleuths. She goes and makes sure it's really a good product before we spend our money on it. She found some review. A guy went to a local pond, filled the pond water in his Berkey, and it filtered all that stuff out. It tasted just delicious water. That's how effective it is. Berkey's not a sponsor of the show, neither is Apple. But I'm just telling you, I live in Houston, Texas. I cannot drink the tap water. It tastes horrible. I put the tap water in the Berkey and it tastes magnificent, because people ask me, how can you drink so much water? You got to get water that tastes good. So don't buy cheap bottled water. Now, we buy cheap bottled water and we run into the Berkey. Yeah. So it doesn't taste like cheap bottled water. It tastes like delicious water. So if you get water, if you're trying to drink your tap or the cheapest water you can get, yeah, of course you're not going to drink water. But if you can't afford a Berkey, then go out buy something like Ozarka or Fiji or some higher quality water. It's going to taste better. And when it tastes better, you're going to drink more of it.
Yeah. We get our water from a place down the road that filters it for us, and then they'll add in different components that people want, like ionized water. You know, they'll run it through extra special for a little bit more money, but they can filter out the fluoride there. But at our house, we're very rural. We're on well water, so a lot of the water's freshly filtered by our dirt and ground, because we're pulling it up out of a well that's 150 feet down. So, wow. So it's pretty good, but then we do extra filtering.
What state do you live in?
What's the what?
What? I'm sorry. I was going to cough and I tried to force the question out, but it didn't work. What state do you live in?
Oh, sorry. I live in Arizona.
Okay.
In a very
So I live in Houston, Texas, and the water table is so high to the ground, there are no wells. You probably could drill a hole in your backyard and have a well. So I was just fascinated about that. When I used to live in Rochester, New York, you could have wells because the water table was lower, because you had to, because of the cold and the snow and all that nasty stuff that happens up in north. I lived in the north for 33 years, and I said, enough of this. I'm moving south. So I don't hate the north. I just don't miss those winters at all. Now, I don't mind visiting New York when it's 1 billion degrees in the summertime down here. That's kind of refreshing, but I wouldn't want to live there.
I love living in Arizona, but we have 2 seasons. We have summer and spring. So it's chilly, but it's not freezing unless you go up into the high mountains. And we have summer, which is very hot. My favorite temperature is 105, but we don't have humidity, so it's not like a Texas 105. A Texas 105 is probably like 115, 120 here.
Hey, it's Mr. Productivity, and a quick timeout from the episode. I have 2 big favors to ask of you. If you are watching or listening to this on Spotify, first of all, if you would give me a follow, that would help the Spotify algorithm to serve this podcast up to other people so I can help them like I'm helping you. And would you leave me a comment? There's a place here on Spotify where you can send me a comment. You can say hello. You can say, what up, dog? You can say, hey, Mr. Productivity, love the podcast today. Just remember, Mr. is all spelled out, M-I-S-T-E-R, Mr. Productivity. Hey, thanks for your attention. Let's get back to the episode. Woohoo! There's a meme that comes out every summer where there's the sun, there's Texas, and then there's Earth. And that's kind of what it's like. It is really stinking hot down here, and air conditioning is primo here. So I want to go back to, you were probably a healthy young lady, and then you came into the chronic issues. So walk us back before you started having these health issues. I mean, obviously this is not going to be a Joe Rogan long podcast, but briefly tell us, you're going through your life is going good, you're healthy, you're rocking and rolling, and all of a sudden your health deteriorated, and then take us through that part of your story.
Sure. So I was the head coach at Washington State University. I was an athlete my whole life. I started at 4 years old. I did gymnastics, multiple different types of dance, cheerleading, soccer, track team, sang in the church choir. I was very, very athletic and always doing something, and continued that through college. And then after college, started my own cheer and dance training company. And then a year later, took the head coaching position at Washington State University and built up. I was the first coach they ever hired and built up their program. And still to this day, they're in the top 5, top 10 of cheer and dance teams in the country. So it was something that I dedicated my life to. I was very athletic. I worked out 6 to 7 days a week. And sometimes we'd have 2-a-days where you work out in the gym, and then you go in and you're doing a 2-hour practice with all the routine and stunting and those types of things. So I went from that to, first I got endometriosis, and I still coached through the endometriosis, even though I was going through laparoscopies and eventually a full hysterectomy and had to come back from that. Beat it. I'm like, yes, I conquered the world. And then a couple years after that was 1999. In 2001, I had a knee injury. I had tore my meniscus and my MCL and went through surgery. They fixed it. I was back to doing back handsprings within 6 weeks. And the next year, 2002, I got in a minor car accident, and the guy was going around 20 miles an hour, hit me. I was sitting still, but my body was twisted because he was coming from behind me. And I was like, this guy's going to stop. And I twisted myself between the steering wheel and grabbed onto the passenger seat. And it got me just right. And it triggered a rare disease to start attacking my body. And I went from being very athletic, totally healthy, to bedbound. I would go to practice to coach, and I couldn't. I would lay down on the floor. The team trainers and doctors would be working on me instead of working on my student athletes. I would go back to my office and close the door and sleep. I was sleeping 20 to 23 hours a day when possible. And I was not living any life at all. I went to the doctors and said, if you could go anywhere in the world, because they didn't know what was wrong with me, but they knew something was wrong. And I said, if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? And they said, we would go to Arizona. And they sent me to Arizona, and I've been to 6 states now for treatment, but I stayed in Arizona as my home base and traveled out to the states as needed to get treatment. And even to this day, I still travel to California to stay in remission.
Wow. So you went from bedbound and wheelchair bound to walking. So tell us about that part of your story.
As the doctors were trying to figure out what was wrong with me, everybody had their guess, and they were looking at me with their own specialty. So if it was a lung doctor, they were looking at my lungs. Why aren't her lungs working correctly? The heart doctor was looking at my heart. My stomach doctor was looking at my stomach, not realizing that I had a rare disease that was attacking multiple organs and my entire body. Each of them said, let's do this, let's do that. And every suggestion that the doctors gave me, I followed. And it turned out I was doing all the wrong things. I did 3 years of the wrong physical therapy. I had a doctor tell me I was going to die if I didn't have one of my ribs removed. So I rushed into surgery without asking questions, had my rib removed. And through this time, all the parts of my life were falling apart. And I said, there has to be a better way. I have to advocate for myself, and started learning the health system and learning the words that the doctors and nurses were using to better understand, and then realized they didn't have time to teach me how to be a good patient and how to help myself back to healthy. So I started doing that on my own and coming up with ideas and tips and tricks and finding resources and putting things together, and then started getting involved in nonprofits and helping people do the same thing so that they can get back to healthy and not wait for somebody else or something else to be their cure. And then I also looked at each moment. Instead of saying, I have 24 hours, what am I going to do? I started giving myself grace and patience and saying, hey, this used to take me an hour to do. Now it might take me 3 weeks. That's okay. I have the grace, and I give that grace to myself. I will work at accomplishing whatever I need to accomplish. I just need time, and breaking things into smaller parts and really trying to figure out what the next step is. And if that step was too big, create it into smaller steps, and then do the things that were easier to do first. And then the things that were harder to do were easier because all of those other things were out of the way, and just approaching it each and every day. And I ended up at a medical conference with my husband, and we were there to hear a doctor talk about specifically my rare disease. And we thought he was going to talk about this other treatment that one of my friends and my stepsister got. She had the same rare disease as me. She's passed away. And he ended up talking about a whole new treatment option. And I realized there's always research and science going on, and that we need to be looking down the pipeline to see what's coming and what's going to be appropriate. And I learned about the treatment that got me into what we call remission from him. And there was a 5-year waiting list. They were doing 2 patients at a time in the United States. They were doing other treatments out of the country. I was on the list for both, to do it in the United States or in Germany. And whichever bed came open first, they had 2 different versions going. And I was going to try whichever one came first. And that 5-year waiting list, because I met that doctor at a doctor's conference in person, was able to get me in sooner. And I heard about it in 2007 and went for treatment in 2009, and went into the hospital in a wheelchair. And 7 days later, I walked out.
Wow. Wow. You said something I want to make sure that we don't gloss over it, that the heart doctor wanted to look at your heart, the lung doctor wanted to look at your lungs. And I'm a big proponent of functional doctors. They look at the body as a whole.
And that's
as a whole. Yeah, because
how I got diagnosed. The functional doctor said, send me all of your records from all 42 providers. And before he even saw me, met me, anything, he went through all those records and then said, okay, come in for a visit. And I went in and he said, I think I know what's wrong. And I said, well, I think I want to go home and study it myself first. And that was the first time I advocated for myself. And I went home and studied it. And a week later, I went back for the testing and was tested positive for algoneurodystrophy.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, there are averages for everybody. So everybody's average normal temperature is 98.6. Mine, I'm 2 degrees colder.
Me too.
So remember during that, I'm going to say it's my show anyway, the pandemic, when they did the temperature test.
Yep.
If I had 98.6, they go, you're good. Actually, I had a fever, but I'm not going to tell them that. So just because the averages and you're not average doesn't mean there's something wrong. I heard something, I think it was Dr. McCullough said that it used to be blood pressure, 140 over 100 used to be normal. Then it was 130 over 90, then 120 over 80. Now it's supposed to be less than 120 over 80. And he said this thing that what's happening is the lower they make it, the more people need to go on subscription blood pressure medicine. And when he said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, are you serious right now? So then I'm wondering how many other things in the world that are we taking that we don't need to take? Because let's say blood glucose should be under 80, but yours is running at 110, but that's normal for you. We don't know what normal is for you. All we can say is, well, we think normal is under 80, but maybe you run high. Like my temperature runs cold. So I think we got to be really careful to put a blanket number on everybody.
Right. Define normal. There is no normal. And I have a degree in social psychology. So that was one of the things that I learned back in the early 90s. But nowadays, we move the Overton window. We say, oh, this is good. And then we go, oh, wait, people are outside the window. We can capture more if we make the window bigger. We move the window over. We need to figure out what our individual normal is. And that's why I push for individualized care, because what is right for you is not necessarily right for the person next to you. And we need to be seen by our medical providers the same way. Just because they treat people with MS doesn't mean that all people with MS should get this medication or that medication or, you know, any particular thing. You might be able, I know people with MS that aren't on any medication. They're finding other ways to manage it and handle it. So you really have to find out what's right for you. And the more data and information you can have like using the tools and devices that help with AI or smartwatches or blood pressure cuffs that you can even take your own at home and figure out what your normal is. So that when you go to an emergency room and your blood pressure's high, you can say, hey, this is high, but I've been taking my blood pressure for the last 3 months or 6 months or a year. My normal is 90/60. This is an extenuating circumstance. Obviously, I'm in distress. That's why I'm at an emergency room. It's not normally high. Don't put me on a medication because one day it's high. It's not my normal.
Oh, I have my doctor, which I go to very rarely because I'm trying to do everything like food is a medicine. Last time I went there like 4 years ago, and he said, my blood pressure is high. He wants to put me on blood pressure medicine. But when you go to the American Heart Association, the first thing they say is lose weight, stop smoking, stop drinking. Doesn't say go on a pill. And because who funds all the doctors? Big Pharma. They want you on their monthly subscription. So
Absolutely.
What happened was I lost weight. My blood pressure went down. Now it's in the so-called normal range, but I didn't have any medication. Listener, I'm not saying if you're on blood pressure medicine, you should stop. That's between you and your doctor. What I'm saying for myself, I did my own research. I was my own advocate and found out losing weight, cutting out, eating the crap in your life lowers your blood pressure. It worked, and I didn't have to go on a medication. So what Barbie and I are encouraging to do is, first of all, when the doctor says take a pill, question it. It's your health. Make sure you understand 100% why you're taking this pill. My father, he died in April 2023, suddenly, but he had so many pills he was taking. And my father's from the generation is you don't question the man or the woman in the white coat. I'm like, Dad, why are you taking all these pills? He didn't know. He just took them. I'm like, Dad, it's your health. You have a responsibility and you have a right to say, hey, why am I taking this pill? And it turns out he had two different cardiologists who gave him two different medications that were counter. What's the word I'm looking for? They're conflicting with each other. Yes. And now I don't know if that resulted in his death or not. I don't know. But the point is, every doctor prescribes medicine. I think they're supposed to say, what other medication are you on? I think that's part of the whole doctor thing. Yes, but my point is, listener, if you get nothing else out of this episode with Barbie, be your own advocate. If you're a parent, be your child's advocate. Question the doctor. You are allowed to do that. Barbie and I are giving you permission. If you don't understand something, go, I don't understand. Why am I taking this? Is there any other alternatives? Can I maybe exercise, lose weight? Is there any other option that's non-medical? You have a right to do that. You have a right to ask your doctor if there's alternatives. If they say, no, just take the pill, well, then maybe you need to find another doctor.
I was going to say, don't be afraid to fire your doctor if the doctor is not able to do what you need. Every doctor has their own specialty, and every doctor isn't right for every patient. Every patient isn't right for every doctor. So know and ask questions. What is your specialty? What are you seeing for me? Can you give me a pharmacogenomics test so I know exactly what medication I need to take? The fifth leading cause of death in the United States is adverse drug reactions. And it's because people just say, oh, my doctor told me to take this, I'm going to take this. And then you have a reaction to it. But we have testing now that can show you that these medicines aren't right for you. I was taking a medication for valley fever a few years ago, and I kept telling my lung specialist, I'm allergic to this medicine. And she was like, no, this is the only medicine. You got to keep taking it. And I was developing skin ulcers. They had to give me special shampoo because I had ulcers on my head and on my arms and legs. And now I have scars from it. And then I got my pharmacogenomics testing back and they said, oh, I'm so sorry. You're actually allergic to this. I had been saying that for 10 months. Wow. And at the same time, valley fever attacks your lungs. So I was having issues with breathing. So I'm thinking I got to take this pill to breathe. And really, I was doing better off the medicine than I was on because I was allergic to the medication. So really learning to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to go through this. No, I'm not going to do this. I was 90 pounds when I first got sick. They couldn't tell me it was because of my weight. I have a lot of patients that get that one. Oh, you need to lose weight and then you'll feel better. Well, I was already 90 pounds. They couldn't tell me keep losing weight. But I did have doctors say, oh, you need to get this device implanted into your body and this will help you. I really didn't want to do it, but I was researching it, and I called the manufacturer and said, hey, I'm 90 pounds. And they said, you're too small for the device to go into your body. So that got me off of that hook. But asking questions, I started saying, what are the studies that this device would even work for patients? And they said, we don't have any long-term studies. We only have studies up to 6 months. Why is that? I don't know. We just don't fund those. Well, it turns out when talking to other patients that actually went through and got the device implanted, after 2 years, the battery goes bad. You get a skin infection, a blood infection. You get all kinds of complications, and the doctors make more money. It becomes their bread and butter. So they don't tell you about the complications that you might now experience in 2 years that could kill you. They take the funds at the start, and then they take the funds along the way. All the while, you're hurting your own body while they're making money off of that system. So you really need to speak up and ask questions and say, hey, but wait, what do the studies say? What if I fall out of the normal range? And what if I need something different? Are you going to be on board with me? And find a team of providers, if you have a chronic disease, that will work together and help you be a part of that team. And your position should be chief of staff of your own medical team, and 100%. Use providers as a tool.
Wow. This has been a very interesting conversation because, in case people don't know who listen to the show or watch the show on Spotify, I don't go into these with any pre-scripted questions, and I like the direction we went. And the one sentence I want to leave people with, which we've repeated several times in the show, be your own advocate. If you're a parent, be your child's advocate. Do not be afraid to question the doctors. Understand. And if the doctor's got to sit there for 20 minutes and run late the rest of the day while you keep asking them, don't let them leave unless you get your answer. So, Barby, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. Where can people go to find out more about you and what you're doing in the world?
They can go to barbyingle.com and internationalpain.org.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show, sharing your story. So after you go to her websites, don't forget to head on over to MrProductivity.com, MISTER, MrProductivity.com. Until next time, stay productive and stay positive.